I love to get out into nature, but I don't have any company for this, and I have to go alone. I'll tell you about one of these trips now. It was summer. I left the office happy, having received a 2-week vacation from my boss. Looking forward to a great trip, I loaded everything I needed into the car and hit the road. The road was long. I did not expect to travel such a long distance in one day. I didn't take a tent with me because I could easily sleep in the car, folding out the front passenger seat. After 6 hours of driving on an almost straight road, I began to fall asleep. We had to find a place where we could park the car and spend the night in it. I didn't want to be on the side of the road, and it was impossible. I had to find some clearing, and around there was only forest and forest. I drove another 10 kilometers and suddenly noticed an exit from the road to the village. I was very surprised, because who would live or build a dachi in such a wilderness? There are 200 kilometers to the nearest city. However, this village made me very happy, but after a few minutes my joy subsided. The village turned out to be abandoned. No, it was not destroyed, but abandoned. It looked as if all its inhabitants had left it about 3 months ago. But this did not stop me. In general, there was nowhere else to spend the night, and I parked the car near this village in a small clearing, surrounded on almost all sides by dense impenetrable forest. Having unfolded the passenger seat and sat down on it, I went to bed. However, my sleep did not last long. At about 3 in the morning, I heard a knock on the car window. A little chilled, I turned to the glass. The thoughts in my head were confused. Opening my eyes, I saw this. A strange creature was knocking on my window. His head looked like a stump that they started sawing, but not finishing it completely. They left it there. Its jaws opened almost 180 degrees. Its mouth filled with yellow and sharp teeth. The skin was pale, the eyes were yellow, and the pupil in them was narrow and red. Instead of a nose, there were 2 holes. It was then that I experienced a feeling that I will remember for the rest of my life. Feeling of hopelessness. I couldn't do anything. If I get out of the car, I will only become an easier prey. I'll remain lying in a stupor. It will break the flimsy car window and get me. Then I was controlled by panic. I don't even remember when I decided to get into the driver's seat and try to get away from the monster, but that's exactly what I did. The engine roared, and in a panic I rushed on my iron horse, far away from this damn village. However, the monster did not want to give up and ran after the car. I pressed the gas to the floor and drove as fast as I could, but the monster did not lag behind. It ran on all fours and slowly caught up with the car. It was already a meter from the car when I noticed a turn, which, fortunately, turned out to be an insurmountable obstacle for the monster. I pressed the gas until I reached the nearest town, and there I already booked a hotel room. I had nightmares about how that monster finally caught up with me and ate me. I woke up in a cold sweat when it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Somehow I got up and went on to my relatives, but on the way I was afraid of everything in the world. Fortunately, I was returning back by a different route, not through the forest. Already at home, I remembered the DVR that was in the car and recorded everything that happened. Honestly, I didn't want to see what happened that night, because even remembering it was terrible. However, curiosity overcame fear, and I pulled out the memory card from the recorder and inserted it into the computer. Having rewinded the video to the right moment, I saw the monster running out of the forest. I was surprised. How was it able to overcome the impenetrable thickets? But the worst thing awaited me ahead. At the moment where I was leaving the village in panic, the video recorder recorded a decomposed corpse, gnawed almost to the bones, in the window of a nearby house on a table in the center of the room. No, the villagers did not leave. Death overtook them right in their own homes. God, I almost went crazy at that moment, but somehow he was able to cope with the madness and began to live on, not thinking about the abandoned village that had become the abode of the monster. A truck driver told me this story when I was hitchhiking in the north of our homeland. He picked me up on the 105 highway in the Murmansk region between Monchegorsk and Peringa. By that time I had been tramping for about 4 hours. It was dark. There was a forest all around. There was some kind of nature reserve there. I don't remember the name. It was getting late in the evening, but the cars were in no hurry to slow down. Even more so, When they saw me, they stepped on the gas, as if they wanted to get away as quickly as possible, and only this truck driver probably regretted it, and even then in a strange way. He stopped about 100 meters ahead, leaned out of the passenger window, and pointed the flashlight at me. The sun had already hidden behind the horizon, of course, but it wasn't that it was completely dark, and he didn't take his beam off me the entire way that I walked to the car. I approached. He didn't open the door. We exchanged a few words. He looked at me so suspiciously, and then, out of the blue, he told a joke, and I was tired, but this guy was so endearing to me, and what's even more so was the warm cabin of his Mercedes, that at first I laughed out of politeness, and then actually doubled over with laughter. When he saw this, he immediately opened the door. "Get in," he said. We started moving. He looked at me sideways. We chatted about different things. I even started to get a little nervous. And then he asks point blank what I forgot here at this time. I tell him that I want to hitchhike to Barents, and that's all. But I was delayed on the highway because no one was picking me up. Then this guy grinned and said that I was lucky that he got me. Well, then in his words, "Here, after sunset, the roadside is empty, Sam. Local villagers, city people, and only in cars fly through this area and don't stop. And while it's light, voters are being selected, but that's it, if they're familiar. I'm from Murmansk. I know the place well. I think I've traveled all over the region. And if, in the dark, someone on the side of the pedestrian sees a sneaker pressing into the floor and rushes past, we have a rumor that this is not an ordinary passenger. Well, like a story, the village grandmothers will tell you whatever you want. It depends on the skill. The legend is rather local, and I have heard it since childhood. In general, they wander here in the evenings, until midnight, along the road. In the dark, you can't make out what they look like, but no one has the courage to stop and take a closer look. Those who have enough will not tell. They call us fellow travelers, and they have been wandering around for probably half 100 years. There were logging sites here, under the communists. The area was cleared for junctions, and branches were made from the highway. Special contingents were brought from all over the Black Earth region. The places are remote. It's hard to get to populated areas without a map, so they didn't keep a very good watch over the camps. Where do you go from here? So one day we were missing an entire shift at the sawmill. 12 people disappeared as if they had never existed. They rushed to look for them, pulled sailors from the base, combed the forest, and after about a week they began to catch them one by one. Prisoners, they only unite in front of the camp administration. As soon as they are released, each one begins to pull the blanket over himself. So they quarreled in the forests and scattered separately. 4, though they stuck to each other, 3 old and a young one. And this young man was not easy, the son of some party member. He made a frivolous noise. The folder did not excuse him. He had been sitting there for about 5 years, it seems, but the lessons managed to chalk him out. At that time, a warning appeared in the newspapers of nearby cities, saying that you wouldn't set foot in the forests for mushrooms and berries, otherwise you never know. Orientations for the departments were posted, and when they began to find them, they calmed down. Well, the newspaper people, and those who were not directly involved in the search, calmed down. There was such a thing that captured loners told creepy things about Morales, these 3, the oldest hurricanes. And each next one is more and more terrible. When, in addition to those 4, the rest were caught, the cops ran around like they had been shot. Do you know who is called canned food in the camps? That's it. Do you dare now? The last one caught told them that the food was over. The trio of instigators began to look at their NZ. That's why the rest ran away. They themselves felt sick. That kid's folder howled, and he personally wandered through the forests with search engines. And there is not a word in the newspapers so as not to cause panic. We found him, in short. I managed to overcome hunger earlier. And the worst thing is that they literally didn't reach the highway a kilometer away. They would have gotten something to eat there. After this, the authorities secretly ordered to nail them on the spot, and yet they shot a couple of days later. They hid in the swamps, thinking that there wouldn't be much search for them there. They were having a meal when the sailors jumped out at them. They didn't even have time to gnaw the bones properly. The bodies were loaded onto an all-terrain vehicle and taken to the city, but it took it and fell into the quagmire. The driver barely managed to jump out, so they left them in the swamp, and after a couple of seasons, people began to disappear in this area. Those who set out on foot along the road in the evening are on the list of missing persons. People started to be cautious. They stopped walking here. Everything seemed to calm down for a year, and then they started finding empty cars on the side of the road. Everything is like one. Its nose is dug into the ground, as if it jumped off the road at speed. The doors are wide open. Things are turned over, and there is not a trace around. I send. And they set up raiders, patrols, and ambushes, but to no avail. And the people around are not the police. They have no shame in believing in devilry. Therefore, when rumors about strange people standing on the road at night began to spread, they immediately realized everything. Then they almost stopped finding empty cars. No one stopped. It still happens rarely, but the numbers there are not local. Those who passed by this devilry say that when the light hits their eyes, it is immediately clear that there is no person there, because they glow like two saucers, and the longer they go without food, the wider their eyes are. That's why I was shining it in your eyes, checking. And another driver, from Murmansk, said that out of ignorance he once braked the truck at night. What saved him was that the cabin was high and he couldn't immediately reach the window. Just as he was about to lower the window to talk, like me and you, this creature was already standing under the door. It's dark, you can't see anything, and she says to him, "Open up, man, I ask you from the bottom of my heart." The driver crossed himself, immediately fired up his car and drove off into the distance. He says that people don't wheeze like that and don't look at you from the darkness like wolves. When he started accelerating, there was a loud bang on the door. Good metal. This creature didn't reach the window. The glass would immediately crumble. He ran for a long time and didn't sleep a wink until the morning. At the first light, I found a parking lot where people were and stood there. He came out, looked at the door, and there wasn't a dent. There was a gap, as if the reinforcement had been stuck in and pulled through. The men who were in the parking lot crowded together when they saw this case and told him everything. They say that sometimes human bones are found in the swamps, piled up and not white. And when a whole group of foreign tourists disappeared here, the cops launched a raid through the forests. They walked for a long time until they finally found the suck bones, and among them, sharpening from a nail, the kind they make behind bars. After those events, by the way, there were no incidents for a long time. We've eaten, apparently. That's how things are, San. I won't lie, as much as I've been traveling, I've never seen anything like this myself. Sometimes something sparkled in the headlights, but it could have been foxes or wolves that still roam around here, and one day something flashed across the road. Large, the size of a man, but it moved like an animal. Maybe a wolf, or maybe one of these. Be that as it may, no one has disappeared here for a long time and empty cars have not been found. 3 or 4 years. Either it has calmed down, or they are all lying. One thing is frightening. If these creatures are really hungry, they are probably hungry. I listened to this man, listening to the rhythmic rocking of the cabin, while at the same time fighting sleep. Of course, it's scary to imagine such a thing at night, but so tired after those few hours of walking, my body happily fell into slumber. The driver continued to tell stories and answering him sluggishly. I was already leaning against the window and starting to doze. Road signs, trees, poles flashed past, and rare oncoming cars did nothing to dilate the emptiness of the night highway. Half asleep, I looked at the glare that had been floating among the trees for several minutes. It was as if the light of the moon was falling on the bicycle reflectors. You know, I'm not one of the timid ones, and I heard worse stories and even practically took part. But then I got a cramp. The yearning long-distance driver continued his stream of speech, and I became horrified by 2 huge glowing eyes in the thicket, moving parallel to our car and not taking their attentive and very hungry gaze off me. It chilled me to the bone. I turned to the driver, noticing that he suddenly fell silent and stared at the road. The silhouette on the side of the road was quickly approaching, and I was torn by two feelings: to squeeze into the seat and become invisible, and at the same time to stick to the glass and see as far as possible in the dark. This voter, as we passed by, "Oh, Sanyu, how lucky you are that I picked you up," the driver muttered then, without taking his eyes off the creepy figure. Most of all, she resembled a cat staring at you from the darkness, in whose eyes the light from a flashlight was reflected. Our truck was moving at a decent speed, and this was at least a little reassuring. But at the same time, we drove so fast that everything turned into a blur, and somewhere on the edge of hearing, a disappointed howl reached me. Something started to puff right outside my door. I looked out the window and dropped me off. "We won't touch you. He's ours, our prey." "Why did he pick you up?" A wheezing, growling, out-of-breath voice came from the other side of the cabin. Exactly the same shadow as the one under my door moved and leaped separately. They looked at each other, and the first impulse to stop and intervene immediately passed when the side mirrors finally reflected what was happening around the unfortunate people's car. Remember these coordinates: Murmansk region, Highway E105, section between Monchegorsk and Perenga. Never stop there after sunset. "Dad, how long will it take to go?" Tim whined again in the back seat. It seems the father picked up his mobile phone and checked the navigator. "A couple more turns and we're there. Watch the road, Eddie." The woman in the front seat unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to her son, who was cuddling a gray stuffed bunny. "It's okay, we'll be there soon, Eddie." She looked at her husband. "It seems to me that something is missing." "Don't worry, it's always like this before the holidays. Troubles, gifts, but this time, we won't have to do anything." What could be better than celebrating the new year in one of the best hotels in the suburbs? Claire wanted to say that it would be more comfortable at home, but for some reason the words got stuck in her throat. "You know, Eddie, it feels like we forgot the cat at home." "Funny, with your allergy to animals." Eddie grinned and turned the steering wheel sharply to the right. "It's just a comparison. But for your sake, my boys, I'm ready to pretend that we left the cat in the care of the neighbors." The man smiled, turned right again, and the car stopped in front of the entrance to a huge hotel. Golden facade, white columns with atlases, 7 floors and many balconies. The family got out of the car and cheerfully walked towards the front door. A doorman met them at the door, took their bags, and escorted them to the reception. A huge hall with floors polished to a mirror shine. A tree 3 meters high, hung with garlands and colored balls. Palm trees and tubs along the edges of burgundy sofas and armchairs. Hundreds of lamps hanging from the ceiling directed their light into every corner of the hotel. "Welcome to the Hotel Anti-Eternum," the girl behind the counter said sweetly, and pushed the book to fill out. "Timmy, sit on the couch for now, while Dad and I check in." "How much longer?" asked the boy. "There's not much left anymore. You will be shown to the upper floors." The girl behind the counter smiled and winked at the boy. When all the data was recorded and the porter accepted the luggage, the family of 3 entered the elevator and the doors closed. The girl ran her eyes over the papers, sighed, and began to correct inaccuracies. New students often forget to add the last date. So, father, 1975-2021. Mother, 1978-2021. Son, 2015-2021. Now, everything is correct. A beige Buick drove along a deserted highway, kicking up snow dust that settled in its wake. A girl was sitting behind the wheel and humming something. A guy was dozing next to him, his legs thrown up on the dashboard. "You won't believe what I just remembered," she suddenly exclaimed. "Why did you want to let me sleep, but then changed your mind?" The guy stretched and lowered his legs. "One story about a family that crashed on this highway exactly a year ago. It's so peaceful. Is there anything else, or can I go back to sleep?" "No, don't sleep. I recently read it somewhere on the internet. There is, just nearby, an abandoned hotel. So their car skidded on the road right into the trees. No one survived. There seemed to be a husband and wife and a boy there, but the eldest daughter survived because she did not go with them. But a few months later she was found dead. The police never explained what really happened to her. The official version said overdose." You know how to create horror, Christy. Well, in short, I started telling all this for a reason. No, no, and one more time no. Well, please, Roby, I really want to look at him. It turns out that that road was not closed, and this detour was clearly planned. You just wanted to look at the abandoned hotel. Christina, you're driving me crazy. Well, please. The girl looked at the snow-covered road, and at the same time looked pleadingly at the guy. Let this be a gift for the new year. I won't ask you for anything else. Christy, it's 3 degrees below zero outside. I won't go into a frozen building. Oh, okay, I can run there myself. I just need to take a peek. The girl abruptly stopped the car and turned to the guy. She looked at him with sad eyes for about 3 minutes, and then smiled, realizing that he had made up his mind. Just not for long. I want to catch my mother's roast. She always makes an amazing roast for New Year's. Roby, you're the best guy in the world. Christy reached out to the guy, kissed him, and jumped out of the car. Take your jacket. They stood on the edge of the road, and to their left, almost on a cliff, a 7-story hotel rose like blackened stone. It's true, he's beautiful, Christina said dreamily. A huge piece that is long overdue for demolition. Come on, we need to have time to inspect at least part of the building before it gets dark. Mom will kill us. The driveway to the hotel was littered with tree branches, garbage brought from the road, and other pieces of paper that appear from nowhere. The snow stopped falling in the morning, but some places were covered more than others, falling ankle-deep into dirty snowdrifts. The guy and girl reached the main entrance to the hotel. The walls are peeling, and their appearance was reminiscent of the Middle Ages. The glass was broken in almost all the windows. The Atlanteans who held the columns lost parts of their bodies and looked terribly crippled. The front steps were broken. One of the doors came off and lay a little further from the entrance. How cool it is here. Christy dizzy with her head raised. You know, people in the immediate vicinity don't like this place and avoid it. They say that the hotel was built by an unknown rich man, and immediately after opening, he died. This was a couple of decades ago. The staff also knows where they went. The land here is not fruitful and no one needs it, so people left everything like that. But there are rumors that on New Year's Eve, music and people's voices can be heard from the hotel. I hope there are no ghosts here. They don't exist. The girl grabbed Roby's hand and pulled her inside the hotel. The hall greeted the new guests gloomily with dampness, gloom, and echo. The floors were cracked, and in some places there were earthen holes. The tree in the very center crumbled, and the rotten trunk obediently bowed in an eerie greeting. There was a hole in one of the walls, and the December sun rays illuminated the hall of the once majestic hotel. Yolka, Roby, do you understand what this means? That even in this outback they celebrated the new year. The guy answered and used the toe of the shoe to pry up a cushion from the sofa that was lying on the floor. No, the Christmas tree means that people abandon this place on New Year's Eve or immediately after it. It's strange, just like that, to close such a huge establishment. Oh, what beauty. Christina walked up to the reception desk and took a registration book from the shelf. The cover is blue, cracked and crumbling at the corners. The leaves curled and turned yellow. Christy, are you satisfied yet? Robbie desperately looked towards the exit. Of course not. Look, here you can see the names and signatures. Only the arrival dates are strange. Only the years, and even then, they are all written in a different order. What are you doing over there? I'm registering. The girl answered laughing, and taking a pen from her jacket pocket, wrote in the empty space, Robert Sloan and Christina Simon. Your room is on the 3rd floor, along the corridor to the left. And Christina, taking the key off the board, handed it to her boyfriend. Maybe it's not worth it. Coward Roby, would you like to take a look at the apartments? Time is almost up. The sun will set soon, and getting to Mom will become more difficult. As you know, I'll take a quick look at the number. And the girl, without waiting for her boyfriend to decide to join her, went towards the elevators, where the stairs should have been located nearby. The steps, once covered with carpet, crumbled right underfoot. The wooden railings collapsed, gathering at the bottom in a jagged heap. There was dampness all around. Small bushes had sprouted somewhere, but the snow obviously couldn't get here. The girl rose carefully, pressing herself against a moldy wall, counting the flights. Why exactly the 3rd floor? Roby shouted from below. Because it's more fun. Catch up. I'm already in the corridor. The third floor looked like a place from a horror movie. Darkness engulfed almost the entire corridor, and it was impossible to say how many meters it stretched deep. To the right of the stairs, against the wall, stood the maid's cart. Neatly folded towels were slowly rotting. Bottles of shampoo foamed with green sludge. The girl took out her phone and turned on a flashlight. The left side of the corridor appeared in the darkness. The wallpaper was peeling off the walls, and now it was completely impossible to tell what color it had been before. Some of the room doors are locked, some are open, but Christina seemed to be going to a certain place. First, second, third, I think it's this one. The girl pushed the door open and pointed the light inside. The curtains on the windows had faded, and the light of the winter sun fell on the huge bed. Next to the chairs were 2 bags and a suitcase, from which protruded the air of a stuffed bunny with the child's name Timmy embroidered on it. The flashlight beam danced across the walls and corners, and from under the bed a black hand appeared, rotted over many months. She slowly reached for the girl's leg, as if afraid to scare her away. "Where are you?" I went into Roby's room, and the hand immediately disappeared. "Your eyes look like you saw a ghost. You won't believe it, but I think I heard music, some kind of New Year's chant. Fear can do a lot to our mind. Believe me, I've read a lot about it. Come on, let's get back in the car and go to my mom. I'm not a coward, but this is too creepy. Okay, get down. I'll catch up with you now." Christina bent down and pulled the hair out of the suitcase. The fur remained gray and clean, and in no way matched the destroyed hotel. "And this is creepy too, Christy. Drop him." And at that moment, the creaking of floorboards was heard overhead. The sound moved and clearly revealed heavy footsteps. "You're right, Roby. We've gone too far." The guy ran out of the room and rushed along the corridor to the stairs. The girl ran after. They were in such a hurry that they did not notice that the corridor was no longer dark. The wall sconces were beginning to glow with a dim yellow light. Roby ran down the stairs, rounded the corner, and nearly crashed into the restaurant with a revolving door. Faint New Year's music came from there. The doors swung from, covering the view of the bright kitchen with a set table. This can't be. The guy recognized his mother's kitchen in the setting. On the table with a burgundy tablecloth embroidered with Christmas tree decorations and snowmen, there were candles, salads, and signature roast. "Robert, why are you always late for family holidays?" A female voice was heard, which made the hair on the back of Roby's neck stand on end. "Mom, come in quickly. Father will come now. The garage is again covered with snow. He will be fiddling with it for another 10 minutes. The guy took only 2 hesitant steps forward, and the doors closed with a creak, blocking the excess of light from the kitchen into the hall. Christina went down to the first floor and froze in complete silence. "Roby, where are you?" "Roby." The girl walked into the center of the hall and looked at the tree, which just a few minutes ago was rotten and bent. Something has changed. The plant remained standing, bent, but some of the needles became greener and the balls became covered with glitter. "Roby, this is not funny at all. You know that I'm shy." Music started playing in the hall, and the gray hair fell out of the girl's hands. "So this is all true, and my parents are somewhere here. Mom, Dad, Timmy." Christina rushed to run back to the stairs. That old woman didn't lie when she said that after death, souls need refuge, and they look for a place nearby. My family should be here. Now the stairs looked completely different. The railings were back in place. The carpet was restored and covered the steps. The lamps were lit along the passages. The third floor also managed to transform. The wallpaper became bright yellow. The flowers in the 4 vases came to life, and their smell filled the space. Mom always said that her favorite hotel room was number 4 on the 3rd floor. Christina opened the door and found herself at the reception. "What's happening?" The girl was dressed in a hotel uniform and stood at the counter filling out documents. The hall shone with its sophistication and marble. The 3-meter spruce sparkled with toys and garlands. People sat on burgundy sofas and talked to each other. The hotel has returned to its former glory. "This can't be. Roby, where are you?" Christina shouted, and everyone present turned their heads in her direction. The girl got out from behind the counter and ran towards the exit. The doorman stood behind a glass door, and beyond that stretched the expanse of snow. "Let me out." The girl pounded the glass with her fists, unable to open the doors. The doorman turned and looked at her softly through Roby's eyes. "Roby, help me. It doesn't matter anymore." He answered, opened the door, and the girl jumped out. But what was her horror when, instead of the street, she again found herself behind the reception desk. "Register us, please. We need to be able to move in before the holiday," asked a young woman holding a little girl's hand. "What?" Christine asked, not understanding what was happening. "We definitely need to be in time. Otherwise you will have to wait a whole year. Registration takes place only on this day, before the new year. Register yourself." Christina threw the book at them and ran out from behind the counter again. So everything was repeated and repeated. Christina ran out and then found herself back at the registration place. And Robert welcomed more and more new guests, and soon the hall was filled so much that the roar of voices became unbearable. "Register us," the woman and the girl asked again. "For what?" Christina cried. "We are all cooped here and stuck forever. That's why registration is needed." "Okay." Christina took the book and opened it to blank pages. "Right." The woman smiled, took a pen and wrote, "Margot, 1993. Clara, 2016. Christina turned the book towards herself and realized that they needed to go upstairs. "The receptionist will escort you," she answered and added 2022 to the entry. Next, after the woman, a man came up, and for some reason Christina herself, without understanding why, sent him down. Feeling that he was different from many who came to the hotel. "This is a registration of life and death," she whispered, looking at the book while the next visitors hesitated at the counter. She flipped through the pages and found the dates of her parents and brother. And a cheerful New Year's melody was playing behind me. "So Roby and I died too," and she began to look for their names. After all, she made the recording with her own hands at the very beginning, when they first entered the hotel. Does this mean that she killed herself and Roby? The pages opened and the book fell to the floor. "Should I sign up?" the old man asked, barely able to stand, but smiling. "Oh, of course. Just a second." Christina leaned over the book, on the pages of which it was written, "Christina, 1998 eternity. Robert, 1995 eternity. My name is Larry," said the old man. "Welcome to the Hotel Ante-Eternum, Larry. I signed you up. You go upstairs. The receptionist will take you." Christina smiled sadly and made an entry in the registration book, and music was playing behind them. People in the hall were gradually leaving. The spruce was leaning more and more towards the floor. The light began to fade, warning that a new year was coming, and those